This is the brief on mastering English tenses. If you've ever frozen mid-sentence, wondering whether to say I went or I have gone, this guide completely rebuilds your understanding of English time by throwing out confusing grammar charts and focusing purely on perspective. First, tenses aren't timelines. They're basically camera lenses. Native speakers don't do mental math before speaking, they just pick a focus. The present perfect, like I have gone, is a wide lens looking at your life journey up to right now. But the past simple, like I went, is a zoomed-in snapshot of a totally finished moment. So try the photo album test. Can you put a date stamp on the action? If yes, snap the picture. It belongs in the past simple album. If not, it's an ongoing life experience. Second, train your ears to catch hidden time signals. Time in English isn't loud. It's actually whispered in tiny contractions like I've or didn't, and signaled by traffic light adverbs like recently or yesterday. So we absolutely have to stop translating from our native language. Instead, constantly ask yourself, when are we? Based purely on those English anchor words. Finally, use the storyteller's palette so you don't sound like a robot. Speaking only in the simple past sounds like you're filing a dull police report. Paint a picture instead. Combine continuous actions to set the background scene, like I was driving, with a simple past snapshot for the main event, when the car broke down. By simply picking the right camera lens, listening for whispered signals, and mixing your scene-setting colors, you can finally stop translating and just start connecting.
Welcome to Daily English Flow. Stay until the end for a special bonus tip. Don't forget to like and subscribe.
So have you ever been right in the middle of a really great conversation, like everything's flowing perfectly, you're feeling super confident, and then suddenly you just freeze?
Oh, yeah. The absolute worst feeling.
Right. Your brain essentially just blue screens because you are, scrambling to decide, wait, do I say I went or I have gone?
Yeah, or maybe you're sitting at your desk staring at a drafted email, and as you read it back, you realize your timeline is just a confusing maze.
Exactly. You started in the present, jumped to the past, and somehow, you ended up predicting the future in the exact same sentence.
It is a very specific kind of panic, isn't it? You're just cruising along, communicating totally naturally, and out of nowhere, a grammar rule you barely remember from like high school just suddenly slaps you in the face.
Yeah, it completely derails your train of thought. And if you are nodding your head right now listening to this, you are firmly stuck in what our source material for this deep dive calls the B1 tense trap.
Which is such a great name for it. And for context, B1 is that intermediate plateau in language learning.
Right. You know enough vocabulary to survive, sure, but the mechanics of the language still feel like this giant chaotic maze with 12 different doors, and you just never quite know which door to open.
Yeah, which is a highly stressful and frankly, completely exhausting way to experience a language. Demands so much processing power from your brain just to get a single sentence out.
Definitely. So, okay, let's unpack this. Our mission for today's deep dive is to get you out of that maze.
Please.
We are going to fundamentally rewire how you think about English time. We're totally abandoning the traditional rigid timelines and literal translations that most textbooks rely on.
Good riddance.
Right. Instead, we're going to look at some fascinating alternative frameworks from our source material using logic, visuals, and what they call camera lenses to help you master your speaking, listening, reading, and writing skills. And, do it without the panic.
This really is a crucial paradigm shift, I think. Because to escape that B1 tense trap, we have to start by completely demolishing the way we were taught tenses in the first place.
Oh, for sure. The old way just doesn't work for real conversation.
It doesn't. Most traditional education treats grammar like math formulas. They give you a timeline with an arrow pointing forward, make you memorize a formula like subject plus have plus past participle, and expect you to just calculate the right answer in real time.
Which is crazy because native speakers do not perform timeline algebra when they talk.
Exactly. They don't. They think about focus. They think about perspective.
They aren't doing math. They're just deciding what they want you to look at. And that brings us to the core metaphor of our source material, which I actually found incredibly liberating.
Oh, the camera lens thing.
Nah, a tense is not a math formula. A tense is a camera lens.
It is such a brilliant way to reframe the concept. Let's look at how this works in practice, starting with the lens you use when you want to focus on a life journey. In grammar terms, this is the present perfect. I have done, I have seen. But instead of memorizing the name, think of it as a wide-angle lens. You use this when you're focusing on past actions that are, like, fundamentally connected to the present moment.
So the exact time doesn't really matter.
Exactly. The exact time the action happened doesn't matter to the camera at all. What matters is the result or the accumulation of the experience itself.
Okay, so if I say I've lost my keys, the actual event of losing them is in the past, obviously.
Right.
But I'm not focusing on the past. The camera is pointing at the present result, which is me standing outside my front door in the rain, completely unable to get inside.
Precisely. You're highlighting the present consequence of a past action. And because this wide-angle lens is inherently connected to the present moment, there's a golden rule here. You can never, ever use a finished specific time word with this lens.
Wait, never?
Never.
Yes.
You cannot say, I have lost my keys yesterday. The mechanics of the language just simply reject it.
Ah, right, because yesterday is a closed box. It's totally over. So if I accidentally drop a specific date or time into my sentence, I have to, like, physically change the lens on my camera?
You do. The moment you mention a finished time period, you are forced to switch to what the source calls the snapshot lens.
The snapshot, okay?
Yeah, the grammatical term is the past simple. This is for a completed action in a closed time period. The moment is entirely gone, locked away like a faded photo in a photo album. You just say, I lost my keys yesterday. Boom, finished. The connection to the present is totally severed.
I really love this photo album test the text suggests as a mental exercise, actually. It completely removes the guesswork if you're stuck between these two lenses.
It really does. It's so practical.
Yeah. Whenever you are unsure, you just ask yourself one question. Can I put a date stamp on this action? Like if I say, I have eaten sushi, I can't put a date stamp on that.
Right, because it's just a general life experience floating in your wide-angle lens.
Exactly. But if I want to talk about my birthday dinner, I can stamp that specific night. So it has to be a snapshot. I ate sushi on my birthday.
It simplifies the decision-making process beautifully, I think. And this visual approach extends to setting a scene, too. Think about the past continuous, I was walking, it was raining.
Oh, right.
Instead of a static snapshot, this is your video background lens. It's the action in progress at a specific moment in the past. It sets the atmosphere right before something happens. The video is rolling.
Thinking about this, it's almost like you, the speaker, are a film director. Using that past continuous is like setting up a wide, sweeping panning shot to establish the scene.
Oh, I like that.
Like, I was walking down the street, the sun was shining, and then the past simple is the sudden, sharp zoom in on the main action when a dog barked. You really need both lenses to make the movie interesting.
What's fascinating here is that visualizing it this way as a director, choosing lenses for an audience, actually reduces the cognitive overload for you as a learner.
Because you aren't doing the math anymore.
Right. Abandoning the massive 12-arrow timeline frees up your working memory. You are no longer calculating, you are just focusing on what you want the listener to see. Do you want them to see the rolling video, the sudden snapshot, or the wide-angle life journey?
And even looking forward, the lenses apply. The text calls future forms the crystal ball lenses, which is fun, and it draws a really helpful distinction between going to and will.
Yeah, that's a huge stumbling block for a lot of people.
It is. So if you have a plan, or you can see present evidence, like, say, looking up at dark, heady clouds, you use the going to lens, it's going to rain. But will is for spontaneous decisions or just pure guesses.
Right. Like the phone rings unexpectedly, you make a split-second decision and you say, I'll get it.
Exactly. You didn't plan to answer the phone, so going to just doesn't fit there. The lens has to match the spontaneity of the moment.
Okay, so conceptually, these camera lenses make perfect sense. They give us a great framework for our own thoughts.
Yeah, they do.
But here is where it gets really interesting. Now that we understand the lenses, we need to know how to spot them in the wild.
Right, because you can't use these lenses effectively yourself if you can't perceive how native speakers are aiming theirs.
And from what our sources say, native speakers make this incredibly difficult when they speak.
They really, really do. This is where a lot of learners just hit a brick wall with listening comprehension. Native speakers do not announce their tenses loudly. They whisper them.
Yes. In fast, natural speech, the crucial grammatical information is hidden away in contractions and weak forms.
Let's break that down, actually, because the examples in the text are almost funny when you really look at them. I mean, we are taught to look for I have, but a native speaker just says I've.
Yeah, it's barely a syllable.
It's just a tiny puff of air off the bottom lip. I've. and did not becomes this strange swallowed sound, like didn't.
Oh, dince is a great example.
Right. Even the word have in the middle of a sentence shrinks down to just a soft fourth sound.
Exactly. And if your ears aren't actively trained to catch these microscopic time signals, you will completely misunderstand when the action happened. You might hear, "I've lived here for 5 years," as "I live here for 5 years," and suddenly your entire understanding of the timeline is completely skewed.
To fix this, the source gives a rather intense strategy called the contraction hunt. Have you tried this?
I've seen it used, yeah. It's quite the exercise.
The idea is that you put on a podcast, open the transcript, and force yourself to pause the audio every single time you hear an auxiliary verb. You aren't even listening for meaning. You're just hunting for those tiny puffs of air to train your brain to notice how weak they sound in reality.
It requires a lot of focus, definitely. But it is incredibly effective for tuning your ear. Another vital strategy they mentioned is developing a time anchor radar.
A time anchor radar?
Yeah. When you are listening to someone tell a story, your brain needs to constantly ask the question, when are we? Because native speakers swallow their verbs, they compensate by dropping little anchor words to shift the timeline.
Oh, okay. Like what?
Words like back in 2019, which firmly anchors you to the past, or lately, which anchors you to the wide-angle present perfect lens.
But wait, I have to push back on this on behalf of anyone listening who has spent years studying English grammar.
Okay, go for it.
Why do native speakers make it so difficult? I mean, if time and tense are so critically important to the meaning of the sentence, why whisper the verbs instead of just announcing them clearly? It seems like they are setting learners up to fail.
You know, that is a completely fair frustration. But if we look at the mechanics of native speech, it's really all about efficiency.
Efficiency?
Yeah. For a native speaker, the context and those anchor words we just talked about do all the heavy lifting.
Right.
They don't need to stress the auxiliary verbs because the surrounding vocabulary already provides the roadmap for the timeline.
I see.
They're saving their breath for the nouns and the action verbs that carry the actual story. But you're right, for a learner, it's a massive trap, especially if you fall into the habit of trying to translate those whispered timelines back into your native language in real time.
The text makes a huge point about that translation trap. You hear a rapid-fire English sentence, you try to translate it literally into your native language, and then you try to figure out the tense based on your own language's rules.
Which is a disaster waiting to happen.
Right, because that system is broken from the start. Many languages don't even have a present perfect, or they use it in completely contradictory ways.
The architecture is just different. You cannot overlay a Spanish or Japanese grammatical framework onto an English sentence and expect it to align perfectly. You have to stop translating.
So you just have to rely on the English context.
Exactly. You have to let those English anchor words dictate the timeline in your brain directly.
And it's not just a listening issue, is it? This timeline shifting happens in reading, too. The text points out that written materials jump around constantly, which can cause real cognitive whiplash.
Oh, definitely. A news article is a prime example of this whiplash. The journalist might use the present perfect for the headline to create a sense of hot, immediate breaking news. The government has approved the new budget, but the very next sentence, literally the first line of the article, will instantly switch to the past simple to give you the concrete details of the event. The committee voted yesterday afternoon.
Wow. Okay, so to combat getting lost in those shifts, the guide suggests making a timeline map. You literally take a printed text and highlight the past simple verbs in yellow, the present perfect in pink, and the future forms in blue.
That's a great visual tool.
It really is. It makes the camera shifts totally visual. You can see the author swapping lenses paragraph by paragraph.
It's a great exercise. And the guide also mentions using the past perfect, the had done or had seen structure as a kind of flashback detector.
Oh, I like that term, flashback detector. How does that work in a narrative?
Think about reading a novel. The author is telling the story in the past tense, right? He walked into the room, he looked at the desk. But suddenly you see the phrase, someone had opened the drawer.
Had opened.
Yeah, that had plus a verb is a structural flare. It's the author telling you, we are now flashing back to an action that happened before the main story. It's the past of the past. Recognizing that structure instantly stops you from getting lost in the timeline of the story.
Okay, so we've established that native speakers swallow their verbs, which is super frustrating, but they make up for it by relying heavily on context words.
Well, exactly.
And this brings us perfectly into our next section, which the source calls the vocabulary traffic lights. Because if native speakers are whispering the grammar, they have to rely on specific vocabulary words to act as these traffic lights.
And the brilliant part is, if you know the vocabulary, you completely eliminate the need to guess the grammar. The word forces the choice for you.
This is where the magic really happens for a language learner, I think. The vocabulary dictates the lens. We touched on this earlier, but let's formalize it. Let's look at the red light words. These words signify a finished, closed period of time. Words like yesterday in 2019 or last week. When you see or hear one of these words, the camera is locked in the past.
So it's a red light because you have to stop and stay in the past simple. You cannot move into the present. I can never say, I've seen him last week.
Right. The word last week throws up a massive stop sign.
Exactly. The rule is unbreakable. Now, compare that to yellow light words. These signify unfinished time or an ongoing life experience. These are words like just, already, yet, or so far.
Because the time period is still open.
Right, so they demand the present perfect.
Okay, so if a specific date locks us in the past like a red light, these yellow light words keep us in that wide-angle, present-connected space. Then we have green light words, which are for plans and predictions demanding future forms like tomorrow, eventually, next year. And finally, flashing light words. These are for those interrupted actions we talked about with the film director analogy. Words like while or as. If I say, while I was sleeping, the word while acts like a flashing light warning you that a background video is rolling and something is about to interrupt it.
That's a great way to think of it. And to truly master these traffic lights, the source recommends a strategy called creating collocation pairs.
Collocation pairs.
Yeah, it warns learners to never, ever write down a signal word in isolation in their vocabulary notebooks. Like, if you learn the word since, don't just translate it. Write plus present perfect right next to it. Since plus present perfect.
Ah, so you learn them together?
Yes. You learn the vocabulary and the grammatical rule as a single, indivisible chunk.
There is a specific drill mentioned in the text regarding this that I really want to ask you about, actually. It's called the yet already just drill.
Oh, yes. The repetition drill.
Yeah. The text instructs learners to practice saying phrases like, I haven't eaten yet, or I've already finished out loud 10 times a day. But if the goal is to think critically about lenses and traffic lights, how does repeating a phrase like a parrot actually stop someone from translating in their head?
I know, it might feel like parroting, but we have to look at the neuroscience of language acquisition here. It really comes down to muscle memory.
Muscle memory for speaking.
Absolutely. When you repeat a specific structure out loud, physically speaking it over and over, you begin to link the vocabulary word directly to the grammar structure in your brain's motor cortex. You are building a neural pathway that bypasses the native language translation center of your brain entirely.
So by physically saying it, it stops being a math equation that I have to solve, and it starts being an actual physical reflex.
Precisely. When you hear the word yet, your mouth simply wants to form a present perfect sentence because it's physically used to doing it.
That makes a lot of sense. And speaking of reflexes, we have to talk about what the text highlights as a massive, treacherous B1 vocabulary trap.
Oh, I bet I know which one this is.
This one trips up absolutely everyone, and it involves 3 structures that look almost identical. Used to, be used to, and get used to.
Oh, yeah. This is a notorious trap. They look like variations of the exact same phrase, but they operate on completely different timelines, which makes them incredibly dangerous for a learner to mix up. Let's break them down.
Please do.
So, used to plus a base verb is a past habit. I used to smoke. It means I did it in the past, and I absolutely do not do it anymore. It is finished.
Okay, but if I add the verb to be in front of it, the timeline shifts. Like, be used to plus an ing verb is a present state. I am used to waking up early.
Right. It has nothing to do with the past anymore. It just means I am accustomed to it right now in the present.
Right. And then we introduce motion. Get used to plus an ing verb describes the process of becoming accustomed to something. I am getting used to living in this new city.
Yes, it's happening right now. It's a process of change, which gives it a present continuous meaning. Mastering these 3 structures is a major milestone because confusing them doesn't just sound slightly unnatural, it completely destroys the timeline you were trying to communicate to your listener.
Right, because if I say I am used to smoking when I mean I used to smoke, I am sending the exact opposite message. I'm telling them I currently do it.
Exactly. It's a huge difference in meaning.
Okay, so we've decoded how to hear and see time. We have our vocabulary traffic lights installed in our brains. Now, the final step is putting the camera in your hands to build perfect output speaking and writing. Let's start with speaking. The guide introduces a concept called the Storyteller's palette.
This is a vital technique for sounding natural, engaging in conversation. Think about it. If you only use the past simple to tell a story, I woke up, I ate breakfast, I went to work, I saw my boss. What does that sound like to you?
It sounds like I am giving a very dry statement to a police officer, just like a list of facts. It's incredibly rigid.
Exactly. It lacks color and depth. The storyteller's palette requires you to mix the lenses. Use the past continuous to paint the scene, and the past simple for the sharp events.
Mix the lens. Okay.
Yeah. So I was driving to work, listening to a great podcast. There is your background scene. You're rolling video when my car suddenly broke down. There is your finished event. Mixing those two tenses is what makes human speech engaging.
But the guide also suggests a technique for speaking called the 3-second tense check.
Right.
It advises that before you answer a question, you should take a deliberate 3-second pause to pick the right camera lens. So if someone asks me, have you ever been to Paris? I'm supposed to pause for 3 seconds to mentally lock into the present perfect lens before I open my mouth.
Yes.
I have to push back here, though. If I take a 3-second pause before every single sentence I speak, aren't I going to sound incredibly hesitant? Won't the person I'm talking to think my brain just froze?
If we connect this to the bigger picture of language learning, we really have to look at perception versus reality. 3 seconds feels like an absolute eternity inside your own head. But to a listener, taking a brief pause doesn't make you look confused. It makes you look like you are thoughtfully considering their question.
Oh, that's an interesting way to look at it.
Yeah. Taking that microscopic pause to ensure structural accuracy builds long-term fluency much faster than the alternative.
Which is rushing to speak, starting with the wrong tense, and then awkwardly scrambling to correct yourself mid-sentence.
Exactly. Slowing down in the short term makes you much faster and more accurate in the long term. You have to give your brain time to change the lens.
Better to pause and aim the camera correctly than to shoot a blurry video. I can see that. Now let's look at writing, which is where things can get really messy if you aren't paying attention. The biggest danger highlighted in the text is timeline jumping within a single paragraph.
Oh, timeline jumping is so common.
This is where a writer starts in the present, slips into the past, jumps back to the present, and the reader gets completely dizzy trying to follow the logic.
To fix this, you have to establish a base tense for your paragraph and stick to it unless logic absolutely demands a shift. You can't just bounce around. And the guide provides some brilliant, highly practical formulas to maintain this discipline. For example, let's look at the email tense formula.
Yes.
I thought this was incredibly useful for anyone working in an English-speaking environment. It's a strict 4-step sequence designed to ground the reader.
Walk us through it.
So step 1 is the reason, and you use the present continuous. I am writing to inquire about the new project.
Perfect. Think about the psychology of the person opening your email. They're busy. They need to know why you are in their inbox right now. The present continuous anchors them in the immediate present. Then, step 2 is the recent action, using the wide-angle present perfect. I have reviewed the contract. Step 3 provides the past context, using the snapshot past simple, as we discussed in the meeting last week. And finally, step 4 is the future action, using will. I will send the revised draft tomorrow.
Look at the mechanics of that progression. It creates a perfectly logical flow. It moves the reader smoothly from the immediate present moment back to a recent present connected action, further back to a specific past context, and then launches them into the future resolution. There is no dizziness. The timeline is rock solid.
There's also the review timeline, which is a great formula if you're writing a restaurant review, a product review, or even just a blog post.
Right.
You use the past simple for your specific experience. The food was cold. You use the present simple for general, unchanging facts about the place. The menu offers a lot of vegan options. And you use the present perfect for your overall life experience. I have eaten there 3 times. Separating those thoughts into their specific lenses keeps your writing incredibly professional.
It creates a clear boundary between a fact, a memory, and an experience. And we cannot leave the topic of writing without mentioning the final strategy, the since-for check.
Oh, this is a big one.
This is a massive area for grammatical errors, even for advanced learners. If an action started in the past and continues into the present moment, you must use the present perfect. You cannot write, I live here since 2020.
Right, because live is present simple, but since 2020 means it started in the past. It's a contradiction. It has to be, I have lived here since 2020.
Yes.
The guide explicitly says that before you hit send on any important document, you should scan your text specifically for the words since and for. When you find them, check the verb attached to them to ensure it is in the present perfect.
It is a 30-second check that eliminates dozens of common glaring errors.
So what does this all mean? Let's summarize the journey we just took. We have escaped the 12-door timeline maze by throwing away the math formulas and picking up our camera lenses, the wide-angle life journey, the sharp snapshot, the rolling video background.
We really covered a lot.
We did. We've learned to train our ears for those whispered time signals and swallowed contractions. We've memorized the vocabulary traffic lights so we can let the words dictate the grammar. And we've mastered the storyteller's palette and the tense formulas to create logical, engaging output.
The goal here is that you are no longer reacting to English tenses with panic. You are directing them with intention.
Which brings us back to that terrifying moment we started with, freezing mid-conversation. Hopefully, armed with these new tools, that feeling is gone. But it leaves us with one final, fascinating thing to consider.
What's that?
Throughout this entire process, the text was absolutely adamant that you must stop translating from your native language to make this work. You have to adopt the English lenses.
Yes, and this raises an important question, actually something for you to mull over after we sign off today.
Right.
If you truly stop translating and you completely adopt these English camera lenses intuitively into your daily thoughts, does learning this new grammar actually change the physical way you remember and visualize your own past?
Think about that. If you are framing your memories through the present perfect life journey lens, connecting the past to the present, rather than using your native language's structure, are you actually changing the shape of your own memories?
It suggests that language doesn't just describe our reality. It might actually construct how we perceive time itself.
Wow. That is a wild thought to leave on. You're not just changing your grammar, you might be altering your perception of time. Pick up your cameras, start directing your English, and see what happens to the picture. Thanks for taking this deep dive with us today into the B1 tense trap. We will catch you next time.